All right.
This is Wise and Nerdy, where fatherhood meets fandom, baby.
Oh, Charles. Not even here, and he's still screwing up the intro with that voice.
He dug from somewhere to get that voice. I don't know where.
Somewhere deep in his soul.
Yeah, we'll go with that.
The sliver of a soul he has left after selling it. I mean, wait, what? No. As you can tell, I do not have Kurt or Charles with me tonight, but I have a couple of awesome people here. We'll go ahead and let you guys introduce yourself. Scott, where do I know you from?
You know me from Dragon Con, like everybody else does. Longtime friend of the track, or well, I guess now I'm the friend of the track. I'm not the head of the track. The head tech of the track.
You're still a pseudo volunteer.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not. A second Charles looks my way, I'm leaving. Anyway, I'm Scott, aka Groovis for Life. Yeah. And I've been filling it, as you can see on my title there. I've been filling in for Charles since 2017.
I have a confession. For the first time ever, because you said it out loud, I realized it's groove is for life and not groovies for life.
Everybody says groovies on that, which is fine. I'm fine with that.
I mean, it's just swapping two letters, and that's what it becomes. But in addition to Scott, we have Rilo over here. Rilo, where would people know you from, if anything?
Well, Dragon Con, I host Venture Brothers Trivia for the animation track, and I also have gotten into the digital media track this last year. And
welcome.
Yeah. And I also host a podcast called Gilded Calamitous Podcasts, which is a Venture Brothers Rewatch podcast, and a podcast within a podcast, Needs More Grenadine, which is an interview podcast.
Nice.
There you go.
Very cool.
See if I could say the word podcast like another time.
As long as you're not claiming to be the rock out of podcasts, it's fine.
Oh God, I'd never. I know.
Neither would anybody else.
Well, no one's saying anyway. All right. Well,
he's not here, so I'm gonna dig on Charles every chance. I mean, I'd do it even if he was here. So
I was gonna say, even if he was here.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and kick it off with
question of the week.
And this week's question of the week is: what scene hits you hard no matter how many times you've watched it?
Oof.
Oh yeah. See, I joked with Charles, and this is probably why he didn't show up tonight, that he doesn't get emotional when it comes to media. He doesn't get emotional much in general. And so I was like,
oh no, see, I'm a crybaby.
I am too.
I'm a crybaby. The one that sticks out for me is probably Mufasa dying in Lion King.
Oh,
that's definitely a heartbreak.
Yeah, I think that one is, because I was too young to understand like the Bambi's mom dying in Bambi.
God.
Yeah. So like I think Lion King was kind of our generation's version of that.
Yep. My wife stole mine here in the chat. Leaves from the Vine.
Oh, yeah.
That's from Avatar The Last Airbender. The Tales of Ba Sing Se episode.
Yeah.
And those that are familiar with it immediately are like, oh, yeah. Because a little bit of context for those that don't know, that is an episode where one of the more beloved characters is remembering his own son's death, and he sings a song called "Leaves from the Vine,"
Mm-hmm.
in honor of his son. But in addition to that, a little bit of behind baseball, that was also the last episode that the original voice actor for that character
Oh
did
boy! Oh
because
wow!
he
I didn't know
died.
that.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
That was
So
Iroh, wasn't it?
yep.
Oh.
So the last season has a different voice actor for Iroh. And yeah, so it was in memory of his son, but also a bit of a swan song for the actor himself. So
Yeah. Wow.
yeah, that one's rough. What about you, Rilo?
I get super emotional all the time. Like
Mhm.
I came in here with like 4 different ones. Like I was first like, oh, I'm gonna do no, it's Futurama, the Jurassic Bark.
Oh, yeah. That's a bad. That one's rough.
Now that's
No pun intended. No pun
it's
intended.
and but then I'm like, well, there was then you said Mufasa, and I'm like, well, that's a good one. That I also cry, and then I cried during every time I see the Doctor Who episode "Husbands of River Song" when she recognizes the Peter Capaldi's doctor as
Mm,
being the Doctor,
okay.
because she goes on about how he doesn't really love her, and
Mm-hmm.
then he's just there, and
See, I've never actually watched Doctor Who, so I'll.
it's super good. It's
I
super
th-
good.
I think I saw the episode. It's been a minute since I've watched Doctor Who, so I'm not sure. I don't know if I've seen that one.
It's a good one. It's one of Peter Capaldi's Christmas specials.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my wife and I recently watched the Violet Evergarden series, and that has some seriously emotional episodes and scenes. And if you want to hear more about that, I was recently on Wait You Haven't Seen with TV's Travis talking about Violet Evergarden, and we talked about how much of an emotional heavy hitter that series and movie are. I mean, if you don't cry during it, I have to question whether you're an android or not. So
I'd probably be bawling then. I like I said, I'm if there's a little bit of emotion, even if I'm not like super tied in to the characters, I will still tear up and choke up.
oh yeah, no, it is very heavy emotions, and they do it's a master class in writing a good story, to be honest. There's not much action in it, but from a character study and making you invested in those characters, it is amazing. So if you're just an action junkie like my mother-in-law, it might not do anything for you. But if you like those down to earth character connections, emotional, yeah, it's a good one. So
I have to check that out sometime when I get a
Yeah.
new box of tissues.
yeah, definitely
Ah,
have a box of tissues.
We're back.
It's on Netflix.
No.
So Violet Evergarden it's got one season
Mm-hmm.
and then a special, and I can't remember whether the season is 12 or 13 episodes. So all in all, the episodes of it are 13, 14 episodes, and then it has 2 movies that are there. So so it's not super long as far as something that's a show plus a couple of movies. But yeah. We also have a couple of speak pipes that have answered this question as well. So this first one is from Cousin Mike.
Hey, Cousin Mike calling in for the question of the week. And I know I've called in and said my favorite movie of all time, and that's where this scene comes from. It's Treasure Planet, one of the greatest retellings of Treasure Island, in my opinion. And it's the scene where Jim is in charge of securing all the lifelines, and then someone cuts Mr. Arrow's lifeline, and he falls into space, and then later after the storm or the black hole, they escape it. They do a roll call, and he's the only one gone, Mr. Arrow. And Jim's like, I had one job, and I blew it. I messed it up. I had one thing. And Long John Silver tells him, it's like, you've got the makings of greatness, and, just encouraging him and all that stuff. And it hits me hard because I feel like that's something we really don't get anymore, is positivity in shows and movies. We get funny, goofy stuff between two guys, but not positivity and building up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely don't see much building up. I definitely agree on that.
Yeah. Current storytelling doesn't, at least the current trends rather, don't lend to that right now. And I would love to see that come back more, where those masculine bonds are beneficial to both in building them up and making them want to be better people. Because
and it's not, it's like you said, masculine bonds, but also not toxic masculine bonds of like suck it up, that sort of thing. It's like you can feel it, you can feel your emotions, but and grieve and everything, but you can move on and do better.
Yeah. Well, and Treasure Planet, that scene in particular is very hard hitting because both of them made the other want to be better. They encouraged each other through their words and their actions. And John is popping in saying Treasure Planet is one of his favorites as well. So
I have to rewatch that. I haven't seen that in a very long time.
It's been a real long time for me too.
I watched it probably about 6 months ago or so with my boys. But yeah, it's a good one. It is very good. So my boys especially loved when he was basically air surfing or whatever on the glider that he builds.
Okay.
I remember that being a level in like the PS1 game for Treasure Planet.
Oh man, Disney and their games back in the day, they were always
they were good.
They were good. They were just always way harder than they had any reason to be. So,
well, games back in the day were harder in general.
Yep.
We won't go into that discussion.
Yeah.
That's all.
I was gonna say
that's a whole episode.
I could go into all sorts of details about why that was, but
yeah. If you didn't read the booklet, you were lost from the get-go because there was no hand holding back then.
Yep, there was no tutorial stage. There was nothing.
Yeah. All right. This next one comes to us from Devo Site.
So the question of this week is, what scene hits you hard no matter how many times you've watched it? For me, that is very easy. The Color Purple, the very end scene. That movie, you have to have no heart to not feel that ending scene. It is actually one of my favorite movies. I remember, I was a teenager when it came out, and even then it was so strong and moving. So yeah, that is definitely the scene over and over. Never can get away from that one.
I've never actually seen The Color Purple.
I've seen the musical.
I don't think I've seen that one either, unfortunately.
I get it, but I probably would feel it more if I'd seen the original movie.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I haven't seen it, so.
All right. And then we've got one more, and this is from Tyler, aka The Full Run Through.
The question of the week is, what scene gets you every time you watch it? And I know that a lot of people are going to go for like movies or TV, but mine actually comes from a Broadway musical. It's Seussical the Musical. It is based off of all of Dr. Seuss's work, mixed up together. It mainly follows Horton Hears a Who, but you get various, scenes and clips from other books. Dr. Seuss, for me, growing up, was always my favorite. My mom read it to me all the time, so to see this musical is fantastic, and I listen to it constantly. But I have to time how I listen to it because I cannot be anywhere in public if I'm listening to the finale because I will lose it every time. The final quote of the show is, "The adventures were over, the sky became pink, and then guess what happened? Well, what do you think?" And even now talking about it, I'm like about to lose it. But it's just so brilliant. It ties the entire show together, and it gets me every single time. No matter what mood I'm in, I could be the happiest ever or the saddest ever. It gets me every single time, to the point that I actually want to get that quote tattooed somewhere on my body at some point.
All right. I guess I'll have to. My wife put in chat that she loves the music from Seussical the Musical, but I don't think I've ever actually watched it. So maybe I'll have to sit down and watch that with my wife sometime. My wife also put in the chat that there are certain parts of Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Oh yeah, there's so many scenes
evoke strong emotions. So yeah.
So I haven't seen Seussical either. I will say one scene that stands out in as far as musical goes, Les Mis, and especially the scene, the famous scene where it was Javert and
Jean Valjean
and Jean Valjean when they're going back and forth. And then when the two of them are both singing their parts, that's that's not so much in a sad way, but just the emotional power of that scene of just these two that are just going at it because they're going for what they believe in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and then when towards the end, they replay that one song and they're kind of remembering all the people that were lost. That scene hits me.
The finale is
another one I haven't seen in many, many years, but I do remember it. I had the CD soundtrack and I wore out that part because I loved that part so much.
Yeah. Good. There's so many that do that. The storytelling is so good that you get invested in these fictional characters or circumstances, and it just.
Well, and for me, it's usually because something hits close to home for me, and it may not even be an emotional investment in the characters, but it's something that applies to me or a way I'm feeling about a certain thing. You know?
Well, and the older I get and the more life that I live, the more storytelling hits me harder because I can relate to it more because I've lived more. And so, I it was rare that I would get emotional during stuff as, a youth or a teenager. But now that I'm married and I have kids and I've lost both my parents, all of this life experience makes everything that much more real because it evokes not just the emotions of the show, but it evokes the emotions of your different real experiences. So
apparently you need to read your text.
What a jerk. All right. So Charles
can't be on the show, but he can text you.
Says, for the question of the week, Doctor Who, the last episode of David Tennant, where he defeated the Master and the prophecy of a 4-beat tap would be his death. He wins, and we are all happy. And then you hear the two coming from his companion's dad, who has talked and will live, or no, will die. I'm having trouble reading here because Charles speaks at his phone, and so the grammar's not always great. Anyway, he goes through a huge screaming range of emotions to then sacrifice himself to save the dad, and it makes me cry every time I watch it.
Yeah, to save Donna's granddad.
I know I've seen that. It's been so long, unfortunately, I can't readily think of it.
And then he's like sobbing as he regenerates, and I
mean, the majority of the regeneration scenes were always very emotional.
Oh God.
You know.
Yeah. I've never seen it, but it sounds. I would probably like Doctor Who, but I don't know. To be honest, I don't even know where to start, because I know that it goes super far back and has a convoluted history with all the different doctors.
This was years ago. I happened to catch a Doctor Who marathon, and I started on season 9, which was, I can't remember. I have to look it up.
I watched maybe 3 or 4 episodes. I'd have to look at the list of doctors to know, to know who it was that I was even.
Oh, Christopher Eccleston was the 9th Doctor.
Yeah. That's where I started too.
That's because that's kind of the first modern Doctor Who, as I understand it.
Yeah, it's the first season of the reboot.
Okay, and that's the few episodes that I had watched were also with him.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I didn't make it very far. I mean, I saw the weird humanoid that's all stretched out and keeps getting moisturized.
Yeah. Moisturize me.
Yeah. But anyway, let's go ahead and
roll that dice.
Are you not going to obey me? There we go. Obey me. All right. Let's go ahead and do
Bad dad joke.
So we'll start off with a bad dad joke. While you guys get yours queued up, we have one from Devo's site.
What does a pilot eat for breakfast? A plain bagel.
I mean, that could work with plain anything, right?
Yeah.
Because it doesn't have to be a bagel. Oh.
Rilo, you want
Rilo, you got one queued up, or
I do. Why does a duck have feathers on its back?
Why?
To cover its butt quack.
That's actually pretty good.
That's one of my boys' favorites. Oh man. You got one, Scott, or no?
I've got a darker one. I don't know if this sounds as bad, but it is a little dark. So I really miss my ex, but my aim's getting better.
Oh man.
Yeah.
I posted this one in our Discord earlier this week. The party got chased by undead, but when the undead caught them, they just gave hugs and kisses. Turns out they were exoskeletons.
That one was actually clever.
That's a good one.
That one. Actually, that wasn't a grown dad joke.
Oh, oh! I thought of another really good one.
All right,
Go
let's
for it.
hear it.
Why can't you fart in an Apple store?
Why?
Why?
Because they don't have windows.
Well played. Well played. I like that one.
Oh man, hot box in the Apple Store.
That's all right. They smell their own farts anyway. They're Apple.
Oh, Apple. All right.
I, Mojo Jojo, say obey me and roll the dice.
All righty then. All right, this one's come up twice. So I didn't pick it last time, so let's go with it this time.
What are you nerding out about?
All right. So, Scott, I hear you're channeling your inner Kurt with what you're nerding out about.
Am I channeling Kurt on this one?
Very much so.
Well, yeah, that's true because with Marvel, yeah. So, quick backstory. I went to a friend's party last week, and we played a game. It was a board game form, but we played a game called Slay the Spire.
They have that in a physical form?
Yeah,
I've only
apparently
seen
they
that as a
kickstarted a
video
board
game.
game. Yeah. Someone else had brought it to the party. And we ended up playing it and had a great time because with 4 other players, it's a deck building game. So and one of the players who also played and is also a friend of mine, we both went home and bought Slay the Spire that evening.
On Steam?
On Steam. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's an older game. Let me see. I should have prepped this a little bit better. Because it came out a while ago. Let's see. Slay the Spire.
2017.
Yeah, 2017.
About the same time you started saving Charles.
Yeah. And I don't usually go for deck building games, but this one I had a really fun time with. The graphics are, I'll say, basic, but there's a charm and a style to them that's really fun. And it's a deck building RPG game, very much like Darkest Dungeon. I would say Slay the Spire probably inspired Darkest Dungeon. And you build up you fight enemies, you build up your deck, you grab relics and all sorts of stuff, and you make a run, you try to get through 3 acts. And there's 4 different characters, so each character has their own like strengths and weaknesses. One's kind of a rogue character, so a lot of their stuff is using knives and poisons. You have kind of your fighter character, which is strong hits. You have a robotic character, which like channels energy. And then a 4th character you have to unlock is kind of, I would say, a monk type thing, where they have different stances and different things happen when you change stances. So it's just a really fun game. I wasted an entire Saturday playing it. Like it was one of those, you ever just start a game and then you look up and it's nighttime?
Yeah.
Yep.
It was one of those for me, because it was always like, okay, just one more run. Just one more run. Just one more run.
That was me in League of Legends back in the day.
Yeah.
Over and over.
And I think it's by the same company, but there's another game that's out now that's really popular, especially amongst streamers, called Balatro.
Yeah, Balatro.
Balatro, sorry, I said that wrong. Which is just poker with deck building. Yep. And it is really like, and I looked at it for a while, and I don't usually go for deck building games because usually, for deck building games, I always think of like Magic the Gathering and stuff like that, where you have to actually like buy the cards or do all that. And I don't have the time to get that deep into something.
Or money.
Or money.
Yeah.
But with both these games, they're self-contained. It's just you're progressing in the game and building up your deck as you go, and that I can get on board with. So, but and you never think like poker as a deck building game, but again, it's one of those like you can pick it up, you can play it for 5 minutes, or you can play it for 5 hours.
I think between Charles and Kurt, they have purchased Balatro like 8 different times
On different systems.
Yes.
Yeah, I got them on Steam. I'm trying to hold off on putting them on my Switch.
I know for sure Kurt has it on Steam, Switch, and mobile. And I want to say he's got it another place as well. But yeah,
I'm not putting either of those games on mobile. I will not do it. I will not get anything done. They will stay on my computer because I can somewhat control that.
If you ever look at Kurt's status on Discord, it almost always says that he's got Balatro running.
Yeah.
Like 99% of the time.
Yeah, they're addictive. Like, again, you can pick it up, you can play a couple of hands, waiting on the train or something, or you can sit all day and play it and not get bored.
Yep. Well, and that's one where you can feed in specific seeds, right? So that you could, if you wanted to, you could look up a guide on how to beat that specific seed.
For Balatro?
Yeah, because the seed determines what order the cards come out in and stuff like that.
Oh, kind of like Binding of Isaac in that sort of way. You can do that with Binding of Isaac as well.
Okay.
I assume so. I haven't gone that deep with Balatro because I played, like I said, last weekend I played Slay the Spire like into all day on Saturday. And then when I tried Balatro, like the same neurons started hitting, and I'm like, okay, I got to stop, or I'm not going to get anything done. But I played it for a good, and my first run was really, really good. So I think I played it for like a good hour or two. So it was still like I still put in a significant amount of time.
There you go. Now, Rilo, you've got several different things that you've been nerding out about. Let's go down that list.
Well, it's not a lot. It's 3. It's 3 things, okay?
3 very large things.
Listen, I will stand by the fact that Baldur's Gate 3 is the best game in the last decade.
No arguments. No, I will. I am 100%. Speaking of game, I literally took 2 days off from work when that game came out, and literally played it through a week. I gave myself a 4-day weekend. I literally played it in the entirety of 3 days.
Well, and didn't it just
so good
smash the awards for Game of the Year all over the place in the different?
It's the only one to completely sweep.
Yep.
All major Game of the Year awards.
And it just got another or it's working towards its final update.
I don't know if it's its final update. Larian they keep adding stuff.
Is it? I'd heard, and I don't know if it was Baldur's Gate or not, but I had heard someone trying to push for a DLC to be rated Game of the Year. Was that with Baldur's Gate as well?
No, that wasn't Baldur's Gate. That
was Elden Ring.
Oh, okay. So what do you love about Baldur's Gate? Especially love, because it sounds like there's a lot to love.
There's a lot to love. First of all, the whole cast, by the way. I love each and every member of this cast, this voice cast.
It's got a pretty stacked cast, right?
All of the voice actors are incredible.
They're all incredible, and I've met a good portion of them, and they're all delightfully British, and I love them. and Dragon Con woefully underestimated their popularity going
yeah.
into last year.
Well, and it's funny because I'll catch YouTube videos of them like playing Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, they play D&D together.
They'll play their characters live.
Yeah, they're doing it again. Neil Newbon, Samantha
Yeah.
Bayard,
And it's-
Theo Solomon, and Deborah Wild are playing their characters again.
Yeah, and it's interesting because some of the cast, I think Neil played, but especially I think like Karlak, Lae'zel, and Shadowheart, they hadn't played Dungeons and Dragons.
Sam Bayard had.
Sam is
Karlak.
Okay.
But the rest of the cast hadn't.
Yeah.
And their first experience was that High Rollers game.
Yeah, so it's interesting, like, and don't get me wrong, they played their characters wonderfully because they definitely embody their characters, but it's interesting how they get brought into Dungeons and Dragons, through work.
Yeah. And it's like, I also really like it because I lost my main D&D group. Like, it just sort of fell apart.
Mm-hmm.
And so having that outlet has been awesome because I still get to play. Even though I'm not playing with a group of friends, although Lord knows I'm trying.
But it's
finding a group is difficult. Finding a group is difficult.
Yeah, it scratches the same itch. I mean, you can you roll the dice. You see the dice rolling.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so you get that same sort of...
It's really the closest experience you can have to the actual Dungeons and like TTRPG.
Yeah, and they plan for every contingency pretty much.
Like it's one of the few games, like a lot of games say like, oh, you can do anything, and it's like, you can do here and then we're going to stop you. It is one of the few games you can literally do anything. And they've planned for it, like Rilo said.
Yeah.
Like you can kill off.
There's character dialogue. There's
like you can literally kill off the main characters, and someone will approach to fill their role.
Okay.
Like in certain scenes.
So they had sufficient contingencies to maintain the storyline, even if you go full murder hobo.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like I said, it's. And
I know.
Yeah, it is the most authentic D&D experience a video game can ever hope to have. Yeah. And Larian especially has been doing RPGs for many, many years.
Oh, the Divinity series is amazing.
They did the Divinity series, and I think they did ports of the original Baldur's Gate.
Did they do the ports for Switch and stuff?
I don't know if they did Switch. I don't know, but I know like they were involved with, I think, Baldur's Gate 2 and then like Icewind, I want to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they just this is what happens when you have the same group of people working on the same systems together, and it all comes together in like the best way possible. This is what happens when you're not gutting half your employees because your shareholders need another boat.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
It is the ultimate statement of like, this is what expertise does. And it raised the bar on CRPGs, and it took a lot of flack for that. But if you dig into it, and it's an RPG, you have to dig into it. But if you dig into it, there is so much there.
Oh no, you fall in love with every single character, and it becomes incredibly personal.
And you can play a legitimately evil character.
Yeah.
And there's a whole different path ending that happens if you play, even if you play like, because they have what it's called the Dark Urge.
Yeah.
And there's a whole different backstory to that. But even if you just play a created character, but you make them evil, like there's so many different ways the story can go. It's a lot of games have multiple endings, but they're just kind of different flavors of the multiple endings.
Kind of like Fable, where you could go light or dark, but it was still basically the same ending.
Yeah.
Right. Or like I recently played Veilguard, and it's just like, yeah, you either have people behind you or you don't, kind of thing. It's like, no, you can have a whole completely different ending if you go the evil route. And it gives you that agency to do it.
And then you also don't have to create a character if you don't want. You could play
you can
one
play
of the
anyone
main characters.
Yeah. So then you even get it. You get their perspective of their part of the story.
I wonder if anyone's upset at the seeming hyper focus that the Forgotten Realms has gotten versus some of the other D&D locations like Ravenloft or something.
Oh, people are salty.
Because Forgotten Realms was for the movie as well, and it's for Baldur's Gate.
Well,
as someone whose favorite book trilogy is the Dark Elf trilogy, I'm fine with it being in the Forgotten Realms. But
yeah, I mean, Forgotten Realms was always the big push, even well before this came out.
Yeah, fair.
Probably because it's the easiest one to kind of grasp.
Yeah, well, and it's very Tolkien-esque in its whole setup.
Yeah.
And so it would be a lot more relatable to a general audience versus some of the more specialized settings. So
yeah.
But yeah. All right, so Baldur's Gate 3, you've got a couple more to go down.
We could probably go forever on Baldur's Gate.
Yeah, no, I shouldn't have started with Baldur's Gate 3 because I knew that.
I mean, I'll have to add it to my. It's on Steam as well, right? So I could add it to my wish list.
It's on Steam, and it's on PS5, and it's on Xbox, and soon there's going to be crossplay, so you can play with all your friends, no matter your system.
Yep.
Well,
and the new patch is adding in a lot of the subclasses that were missing.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, for those that don't like some of the explicit content, there are settings that you can turn that stuff off, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that you could turn off
you can turn off blood and gore and stuff like that,
and certain bits and bobs on people.
Right. So it's a very customizable experience for your own preferences.
Yeah. Well, and there's even now in-game mods.
Yeah, they in-game mod support, which is astonishing.
Like it's really, the example of a studio loving its game and loving its community. Like it's just the perfect example because, there was talks of them, first of all, there was talks of them doing DLC, and they're like, if we do DLC, we're not charging for it. But I think they were even talking about a sequel, and Larian was like, "Yeah, we're not interested in doing that."
Yeah, well, and my personal opinion, a vibrant modding scene can only help boost your sales.
Yeah.
So
there are mod community DLCs that are being planned. So
this is going to be one of those. I think Baldur's Gate 3 is going to be one of those games in the very much like World of Warcraft. And it's going to be one of those legacy games that people are going to just be playing for years on end. Because it's it's infinite replayability just from the game, just from the base game itself.
And then you add mods.
And then you add mods. I mean, they're we talk about like Skyrim or Morrowind.
It's gonna have a Skyrim life cycle, I think, where it'll just keep going.
I still haven't finished I still never got, because I played it so much. I got to Act 3, and this was just after, pretty early after it came out. And that was when Act 3 was not optimized.
It was really rough.
It was really rough. So I walked away from it for a little bit, and then a couple patches came out, and then by the time I got back to it, I couldn't remember anything of what I had
So then
done.
you needed to start over.
So I still have not beaten that game. Like,
It's
that's
okay.
still
I
one
have
of my goals.
400 hours and I only just beat it. Because
Yeah.
like I'll get to the final act and then I'll be like, I want to do a different class and different romance option.
Oh God, yeah. There's so many things to explore. It's definitely like option paralysis.
Oh man.
We don't need to talk about my other.
Yeah,
two.
we need to change subject.
All right. Then I'll jump in with what I'm nerding out about. My wife and I recently finished the first season of the Apothecary Diaries. For those that are not familiar with it, it is an anime. Shocker to our listeners that I would talk about anime. But I really love the dry humor in it. As far as the story goes, it's kind of like House/Sherlock Holmes, which I mean those have a lot of crossover in the story. But make the main character female, make her an apothecary, and put her in feudal Japan living with the emperor's concubines.
Yeah.
And so she uses her knowledge as an apothecary to solve various mysteries that happen in the inner chambers. And she has this obsession with poison, not just like she likes poison, she likes to eat poison. She likes to consume it. She has spent years building up a tolerance, and so she loves, like, she's like, oh, this poison will make my mouth tingle. This poison will do this. Like, she loves poison, and so at one point for a little while she ends up as a poison tester, and she is in love with that position. She's like, this is my dream job. It's amazing. And so, yeah, no, it is very well written. The animation is top notch for a series. It's not quite as good as something like Demon Slayer, but it's still well above most average anime out there. And it's got a compelling story. The second season is currently airing. My wife and I will probably wait till it finishes airing and then just binge the whole thing. But yeah, no, it's been really, really good. I think
I've
loving
seen
it
like
quite
a couple clips. I think I've seen like a couple clips online about that. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, well, and that's half the time the animes that I start watching are because I've seen clips. I'm like, that's interesting. Let's add that to the list.
Well, I just binged through both seasons of Jujutsu Kaisen.
Okay, I've started and stopped that a few different times. It has an interesting premise. It just for some reason doesn't capture me. But I see why people love it. I really do. It's just everything's for everyone.
I'm the type of person, like, I have to, like, if I start watching something, I have to binge it or I won't finish it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Unless it's something that just really grabs me.
I used to be where if I started something, I had to finish it.
Yeah.
Whereas in the past few years, I've gotten a lot better about starting something and realizing, yeah, this is not good, and dropping it.
Yeah, if it's not good, I'll stop. But if it's good enough, I'll push through.
But yeah, I used to be to the point where if I started it, I had to finish it. Like it was almost a compulsion for me. So, but yeah, I've gotten a lot better about trying different anime and dropping, especially with anime, but in general, dropping it if it's not for me. So, but let's go ahead and move on to another segment.
Roll that dice. Roll that dice. Roll that dice.
We have already done both of those. There we go.
How do I?
And this week's How Do I is how do I write a compelling backstory for my RPG character?
Mm.
So I've been playing D&D for many a moon now at this point, and I have seen players that have had excellent backstories, and I have seen players that have a sentence, and that is the whole of their character.
Mhm.
Now, I will preface that depending on the setting, you may not want to get invested enough to have more than a sentence, especially with say the botched guys who their characters die quite often. And
I was
so
gonna say, botch guys, you got like 2 words.
yeah. And so but if it's a character that you think you're gonna have for a while, how do you go about writing a compelling backstory for that character?
I typically just fly by the seat of my pants when it comes to writing a backstory. I let it occur organically in the game. Like I have a rough idea, like a sentence or two, but then it gets fleshed out the more I get to know this character.
Mm. Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. Usually it's if I start with character, it's like, okay, what's the character concept? And I usually dictate that by whatever race I pick, whatever class I pick, and then kind of try to figure out what do they want? What's their end goal, if you will, if they have one. But I also kind of realized that kind of backfired a little bit. Because I was playing in a very long, I don't play with this group anymore, but we were playing in like a 3-year long campaign. And, I kind of had to abandon my first character because they got everything they wanted. They kind of got their happy ending, if you will. So it was like,
It was logical to let them move on and retire from adventuring.
Kind of, yeah, because it was just like, yeah, they're the whole character he was a child when his family was kicked. It was a Goliath, so his family was kicked out of their tribe, and he was left to train with monks, and then his parents were killed. So, it was very much his whole theme was like finding a home and everything like that, and he found that. He found a tribe of Goliaths that accepted him, and found a wife and everything like that. And it was just kind of like, I've got nothing else for this character to do. Like, he's not going to he's not adventuring because he has the thrill of adventure. He's adventuring because, this is what his path has taken him on.
Well, and you provided plot hooks for your DM in that character backstory to fulfill his goals.
Yeah, and I always try to do that, or at least try to because a D&D campaign should be interactive storytelling.
Yeah.
Not always is, but it should, in my opinion, it should be, unless you're just playing a silly one shot with friends or something.
Yep.
If I'm playing in a campaign, then yeah, I got to have a core of like what this character wants. So
yeah, I remember with my I mean, at this point I'm a forever DM, so I've only had a few actual characters. But with my first character, I went to the DM. I said, okay, what's the setting? Where are we starting out? And are there any extenuating circumstances? And so I made sure to write my character in such a way that there's a reason for him to be where the campaign starts. There's a reason for him to be joining the adventure, And so with that skeletal outline, I went ahead and wrote up a backstory that fleshed out my character for myself. And it ended up being about 5 pages long.
Oh yeah.
Most of that is for myself, but I gave that to my DM along with a more summary that was about a paragraph long of what of the gist of what my DM would need to know.
Yeah.
And then I also gave him the long version if he wanted to read it, great. If not, it was there more for me to get into the mindset of my character.
Yeah. And I love that you brought up that you talked to your DM first, because I definitely didn't do that the first game I was in.
Neither did I.
And unfortunately, I kind of felt like my character got lost in the group because of that. I don't think the DM and I were really on the same page of what we were trying to do there. The second group, I had more of that. So, group dynamics will define that too.
Yeah. Well, and one thing that I would definitely caution people when they're writing their character backstory is realize what level your character is and what feats are actually possible.
Yeah.
and also don't try to shoehorn in some equipment that your character as whatever level couldn't realistically have. Oh, I've got this mythical sword from my father.
That's a +5 and yada, 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 yada.
Because all that's going to do is it's going to cause strife. And realistically, as a DM, the best outcome of that would be like, yeah, your father only told you that that was a +5 sword because he was boasting, and it's a complete exaggeration. That's actually just a normal sword that looks very decorative or something like that. Which that's what you got to do.
Well, and that's one of those, like, if you play that right, you can both have a satisfying ending. But if you just play, write yourself as the invincible hero, you're going to be very disappointed.
Yep. Unless you were once the invincible hero and something happened that brought you back down to level 1.
Well, okay.
Power.
Yeah.
Well, I'd say, like, don't write your character as the shonen protag.
Yes.
Don't do that. You're not the protagonist. Like, you're not the invincible hero that will overcome everything. Especially if you're playing with a group of people, you gotta, like Joe said, I think having at least an outline of what your character's likes, dislikes, sort of thing in there is what's going to help you play well with others, because you got to play with everyone at the table. It's not just you and the DM.
Yeah.
Yep.
So what's, in our campaign, my character is a Goliath. Another character was a deep gnome, and another character, and this is a homebrew setup. And another character was like a fey creature. So it's like, okay, what's our, how is my character going to react to them? And, what's his opinion going to be on that? Versus, you got to think of these, that's one of those things you got to think about and take into consideration with the setting the DM gives you.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of it boils down to communication, really. Communicating with your DM, communicating with the other players, having realistic expectations for it, and then having fun with it.
And have flaws.
Yes. Actually, my first character, one of his flaws was he was suffering from PTSD from a fire, because his wife had been killed in a fire and he was unable to save her. And so there were a couple of times where the enemies used fire magic, and I asked my DM if I could have there's some rules for insanity checks or something like that, and we kind of shoehorned that into and so there were a couple of fights where my character for the first several turns didn't do anything because because
Someone
of,
tapped the
of
fire
fire.
spell.
Yeah. And another thing is, don't be afraid to reflavor stuff that doesn't necessarily change the mechanics of a character, but reflavoring it to fit whatever backstory you want, given you have the DM's permission. So, a random fighter, there's no reason why it couldn't be a samurai, something a bit reflavored, but it has the same mechanics as what's there.
Well, and if you're not playing a subclass samurai, but you're just playing a fighter that
because it also depends on which version you're playing, because some actually do have samurai. Right. But if the version that you're playing doesn't have a specific niche, that there's ways that you can definitely facilitate the feel of that without actually changing any of the mechanics.
Well, and definitely keep in mind what the people around, again, if it's a group you don't know, you may want to back things off a little bit until you kind of get the general group vibe. But if it's people that you do know, and I played in a one shot, I think it was like 2 years ago with, it was actually on the DragonCon stream, with a bunch of friends from the digital media track. So I created a Kenku thief, whose name was Meme.
And he only spoke in memes?
And he only, not only he only spoke in memes, I triggered the memes with my keyboard.
Nice.
And that was a lot of stress of the preparation aside. That was a lot of fun, but I couldn't bring that into a home game. I can't bring my whole computer set up and keyboard set up to do that, but
yep.
Yeah.
If you're doing a silly one shot, then lean into the silly.
Yep. I think my last tidbit of advice is, before starting on your character, talk to the DM about what races and classes are even available, because the DM has full discretion on what's available. So you may be a huge fan of Critical Role, but you can't play a gunslinger in this specific campaign because, guns don't exist. So just talk to your DM and find out what your options are before getting so far down the rabbit hole that you're already in love with this character just to find out that it doesn't fit within the campaign.
Yeah, and and there's nothing to say you can't build a bunch of quote pre-made characters. I know a lot of people do that, because honestly, character building is fun.
Yep. So, do either of you have any last tidbits of advice before we move on to the next segment?
No, I think we covered everything. You got something, Rilo?
No.
Okay.
All right. Then let's go ahead and
roll that dice.
All righty.
Time for a commercial break.
Let's see what music we've got pulled in here. There we go. All right. You can follow us over at wisenerdy.com, and if you want to leave your own speak pipe like those that we have heard today from various listeners, you can go to wisenerdy.com/calldad. If you want to support us monetarily, you can head on over to patreon.com/wise_n_nerdy. If you want just one place for all of it, you can head over to our Linktree at linktree/wise_n_nerdy. And there's also a link to our Discord there, which is where we get a lot of our dad jokes, and there's some great interactions there. Rilo joined the Discord earlier today, so that is great. And we are going to go ahead and let both of you plug whatever you guys want to. Scott, what would you like to plug, or where can they find you?
You can find me on my Twitch page, twitch.tv/groovisforlife. I do music streams. Sometimes I do cover songs. Sometimes I do music production. Sometimes I game. If you want to check out some of my work, I am the podcast editor for Goblins and Growlers, which is a TTRPG Talking Heads podcast. Just look up Goblins and Growlers wherever you find your podcasts. My past work is a show called Balatro Stories, which is a serialized horror podcast. Unfortunately, no longer in the production, but we do have 3.5 seasons worth of material for you. It's still some of my best work as an audio producer. So again, whatever podcatcher you like, just look up Blood Crow Stories. The Blood Crow Stories.
The Blood Crow Stories. All right, and Rilo?
You can find me at linktree/Rilo Ward. There is a link there to the Guild Podcast Linktree, where you can listen to a couple of best friends rewatching a show that touched a lot of people, I guess. And I recently interviewed the creators of that show, and that is the Venture Brothers. So you can enjoy that. There's also a link to like my socials and stuff.
Yeah, and I'm only on Blue Sky at Groove is for Life.
I did finally hop onto Blue Sky, but like my first post says, we'll see how much I use it because, well, I don't really social media a whole bunch.
Yeah.
So, but all right. Let's see. So for the March 6th recording of Wise and Nerdy, the question of the week will be, which fictional character would make the best or worst podcast host? That should be quite the discussion, because I can think of a lot that would be great and a lot that would be horrendous.
I just had one come to mind.
So
yeah, I have a few.
All right, and if you want to call in, again, wisenerdy.com/calldad, and you can leave your voice message for the question of the week or anything else. Like, for instance, Devo's site has given us a speak pipe. He wants to change his answer for 007. So a couple weeks ago, we talked about how if you were going to introduce someone to the James Bond films franchise, where would you start? And so let's go ahead and see what Devo's site wants to change his answer to. If I remember correctly, his previous answer was Goldfinger.
Since Charles gets to change his answer for 007 to Austin Power, I'm changing my answer to Cats and Dogs, because Mr. Tinkle, he's the ultimate supervillain.
Because like a powerful dark storm, I will make my presence known to the world. Like a seeping mist, I will creep into the dog's center of power and make them quake in fear at the very mention of my name!
That is a really good movie.
I have not seen that movie, but I do remember that clip from the promo.
Oh, man.
Good.
Oh, Devo's site. Bringing the chuckles. All right, well, let's go ahead, and we've only got a couple more segments left. Let's find out what we're going to do.
Roll that dice.
We have done both of those. We're looking for... I don't think we've done number 2.
Personal story time.
All right. Oh, this one was one that had you guys talking in Discord before we even got here. So tell me about the one that got away, Nerd Edition. So a story about a rare collectible, a game, a comic that you had in your grasp, but you lost due to poor luck, poor judgment, or overprotective parent, or some other circumstance. So something that got away, even though you really, really wish you still had it, or had it in the first place. So Rilo, you immediately had something that you thought of in Discord.
Yeah. So, stupid 11-year-old me saves up enough money to get a used Nintendo 64. Awesome. It's the first time I'm going in and buying a game system for myself.
Mm-hmm.
I go in to the game store and I pick out a regular old Nintendo 64 with an expansion pack.
Mm-hmm.
Right next to it, and I thought about it, was the Hey You Pikachu.
Is that the blue and yellow one?
The blue and yellow one with Pikachu on it, and Pikachu's foot is the reset button, and it lights up like right there. Same price. I went with the regular version because I was like, it has the expansion pack. I never once owned a game that used that thing. I didn't have Donkey Kong 64 or Perfect Dark or anything. No.
Well, if I remember correctly, the expansion pack was just like some extra RAM for it or something like that.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. It's just extra RAM.
So I'm looking it up now.
The price?
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. $35 was what I would have paid at that time.
I'm not into Pokemon at all, but that's an adorable.
Isn't it cool?
It is very cool. It is very cool.
and recently a collector shop in my town got one in, and I got to refurbish it. And I am so tempted to buy it, but it's like I cannot justify spending $300 some odd on a Nintendo 64 that is used. And
I mean, do you really need justification? Do you?
Yes,
really
I'm an adult. I'm an adult with adult.
Exactly, you're an adult. You can eat chocolate cake whenever you want.
Using that logic has screwed me over so many times.
I know. I've gotten myself with that logic. I know.
Oh man, the one that got away, Pikachu. Should have used a Master Ball on it.
I at least got to own the Hey You Pikachu, so I had the game.
Yeah,
and it worked just about as well.
You still had the system, so it's
Yeah, I still had a Nintendo 64.
You didn't miss out. You missed out on a collector's item for sure.
I missed out on a really cool collector's item, and I probably wouldn't have sold my Nintendo 64 if I had the Pikachu one.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, Scott, what do you got? What got away from you?
So mine is a very niche nerdy. Those that know me know I'm a musician. I'm a bass player by trade.
Same.
Oh, nice bass. I always run into other basses. I swear to God, it's like a magnetic pole. So for me, it's the instrument that got away. This was, let's say, maybe like 6-7 years ago. I was working part-time. I had just gotten out of school, gotten out of Art Institute for my second degree. Was trying to make a studio happen. And I was really like tight on funds and everything like that. I had actually sold, not too long before that, I had actually sold like one of my old basses that I had for years that I gigged with regularly. So I was already like hurting. Because if I don't know how many musicians listen to your show, but for the musicians, you get an instrument that you gig with and you play regularly, it becomes a part of you. And, circumstances being what they were, I had to sell it because I needed money. And that, I swear, I sold like part of my soul. So that's one of the ones that got away. There's a few, but the one that really got away from me, there's a used instrument shop that I go to in Georgia called Music Around. And I had gone in there one day. I think I'd gotten like some overtime or something, so I actually had like some money. And I didn't have a bass at the time, so I was like, I need to get a bass. I'm just gonna buy a cheap one, that way I've got something to play. And so there's a brand out, I don't know if it's still out there or not, but it's called SX, and it's just kind of I don't know if they're offshoot brand or whatever, but they usually sell really cheap instruments. And there was this beautiful red, it was kind of like a jazz bass.
Yeah.
And what I didn't realize at the time is the pickets. Well, I realized at the time is the pickups, because this was a used instrument. Whenever they sold it, they had swapped out this like stock pickups for a pair of Bartolini's. Now Bartolini pickups are very high end, very unique sounding pickups. And I guess the shop didn't realize that, because this thing was on sale for like, I want to say it was like $150, around there. It was under $200, so it was a steal, you know. And I didn't realize it when I bought it. I was just like, okay, cool, this is good. And I got it home and I plugged it in, and the thing sounded amazing. Like it was such a strong but crisp bass, just really crisp highs, really fat lows. It played like a dream. I loved that bass. And I was, and granted too, I'm not great with money. I was really bad with money too. What happened was I'd gotten the bass, and then at the studio I was trying to work at, one of our speakers blew. So I had to trade that in to buy a set of speakers for the studio. I did, because at the Music Around you could trade in instruments and get your money back and everything like that. So I traded that instrument in to get new speakers for the studio. And then I never saw it again.
Man,
like because it was one of those, like, just, you know, with any used shop or any pawn shop, like, you know, you can if you look hard enough you can find gold. And it was like I struck diamonds with that bass. Like to this day I still wish I had that bass, because it was such a good sounding bass. And, you know, having to trade that in, and then, you know, not too long after it, the studio folded, so that was especially hurt. Like
a double whammy.
Yeah, it was rough. So,
oh man,
cue the
does
violin music.
Quite rough. Yeah. Oh,
so again, not quite as nerdy as the N64 thing, but still just as gut wrenching.
There you go. Got it for you.
I should listen to Her Blue Sky.
Oh, yeah. So Random Kid said you should watch the anime Her Blue Sky. I've seen that one.
I've heard of it.
I think I watched it a few months back. If I remember correctly, the main character is a bass guitarist.
Yes.
She ends up running into a younger version of her sister's boyfriend who is in a band, even though the actual version of him is alive. So it's not like it's a ghost or anything. But yeah, maybe.
Oh god, that looks it looks like it's gonna be that looks like that's gonna be on the
I don't know how much
on
you
the
watch anime though.
I watch anime pretty regularly.
Okay.
I've
So
been I've
maybe
fallen I've fallen off a little bit, but I'm picking it back up, especially related to something I'm working on, possibly for Dragon Con.
Okay. Well, I'm pretty sure it's a movie, so it's not like a full commitment to
Yeah.
a series or anything.
Yeah, this looks
So-
like it's going to be a tearjerker, which is fine. I'll have to check it out.
It wasn't too bad. I don't remember like getting super emotional, but it had emotional undertones, but it wasn't like a huge tearjerker, at least for me. But yeah,
I will say I
Could
did
be.
love Bochi the Rock.
Oh, I keep hearing good things about that. I haven't tried it yet.
It's such a lovely, like heartwarming story, with some incredible music.
Okay, and it's a girl band, right?
Yep,
is the main focus. Of
yeah,
that one?
the main character, Bochi, has like severe anxiety, and is very much like a shut-in. So she picks up guitar thinking it's going to make her social. She gets really good at guitar, but still struggles socially. And it follows her journey of like finding other girls in her school that also play, and then forming a band, and then playing their first live show and everything like that. And it's really, really sweet. Lots of fun. But there's some really amazing heartfelt moments. Like you see her break through those social anxieties that she has.
Okay,
I'd highly recommend it. And a lot,
I'll have to
and
give that one a try.
and I'm a huge fan of like J-rock and anime music, but that show's got some just really fun and wonderful music.
Okay, I'll definitely have to give that a try. For me, the one that got away, I've got two. The first one is have either of you ever heard of Hero Clicks?
Yes.
Hero Clicks.
Yeah, so it's a board game where you collect the pieces. They've got two different versions. There's a Marvel version and a DC version. They might have a third version too. But anyway, regardless, I played primarily the Marvel version, and I had a Nightcrawler unique. So that's the uniques are the rarer ones that you can get. And at the time it was worth, I don't know, maybe $50. Now it's not, it hasn't maintained its value, but the way that I lost it is the part that's heartbreaking to me. My mom decided to clean my room, and I had left it in the box, and she's oh, and Hero Clicks are relatively light. She thought it was an empty box and just threw it away. And I was like, oh,
good old mom getting rid of it.
So that one hurt, but this next one hurts more. As a teenager, I was huge into Yu-Gi-Oh, real big into the Yu-Gi-Oh scene. And when you went to a tournament, you would get a tournament pack, and the tournament packs were notorious for not having good rates, but each season had a very specific chase card. During season 2, so this is early on for Yu-Gi-Oh, during season 2 I pulled the chase card, which is a morphing jar. And the owner of the store immediately saw it, and he's like, I'll trade you $100 worth of product for it. And being a teenager, I'm like, oh,
heck yeah,
okay, yeah. Well, it is like in the top 100 of most valuable Yu-Gi-Oh cards now.
Oh no,
where it's worth, depending on the day, it's usually about $2,000 is what it's worth.
Wow.
It's gotten up to like $6,000 or $7,000 at different times. And so I'm just like, I pulled that. I could have that. I mean, that'd be so nice. I could sell it and get a really, really, really nice computer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I traded it for stuff that at the time I was like, awesome. Yeah, $100 worth of product. But no.
Yeah, but would it have survived another round of your mom cleaning your room?
Yeah, right. Well, and would it have survived in general? Like a lot of my cards back from that era, they're not in the best of condition.
Yeah.
My Yu-Gi-Oh cards are in decent condition compared to some of the other playing cards that I had. Like my Pokemon cards are they're pretty rough.
Same.
If someone took a look at my limited base Venusaur, they'd be like, "You're a monster."
I was like, well, yeah, we actually used to play with them.
Yeah, right. How was I supposed to know that it'd be worth tons of money if I had actually kept it in good condition? But yeah, no, that one, every year or two I'll take a look at how much Morphing Jar is going for. It's definitely the one that got away.
You gotta stop torturing yourself.
Right?
You're doing it to yourself.
I really am. I really am.
You're Wolverine with the Jean Grey picture.
My Morphing Jar. Oh man. Well, let's move on to a really good follow-up topic to this. It's the Parliament of Papas. When does collecting just become hoarding?
Oof.
When there's no longer a purpose to it.
Yeah. My mom was a huge hoarder, but specifically for nerds, we tend to collect all kinds of different stuff. I mean, you can see briefly right up above me a bunch of different. There's some Funkos down here and some different.
Thankfully, I didn't get into the Funko craze. Like I have 2 Funkos. That's it.
You lucky SOB. Because I bought into it so hard, and
I saw so many buy into it, and I just was like, there weren't any characters out there that I was really like interested in. It was just kind of like, you know, and I saw people, and I know so many people that have like walls and walls of this stuff, and I'm like, I don't, you know, I did my collecting when I was a kid. You know, I was in baseball cards and football cards and all that, and comics and everything like that. You know, but you know, and I had a decent collection of comics, but it just became a box that came with me when I moved.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
And it was just like, you know, and the box was so beat up, like because it just would get moved and then shoved into a back of a closet somewhere. You know, I think when you've hit that point, you know, that's when it's
where it sits in a box in a closet for years and years and years or decades.
Right.
When it no longer sparks joy.
Or just it's not even sparks joy. It's just stuff in a box.
Yeah.
You know, and I think all of our parents have boxes in their house that they don't even know what's in there. Or in their house that the box has moved with them 3 or 4 times, but they still don't know what's actually in the box. They're like,
Yeah.
well, I'll look at it when we get to the new place, and they don't. It just goes up in the attic.
Yep.
Or the basement, wherever.
I've got a box of cords that started with my dad, and I have it. My dad he died 22 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a box of cords that realistically I will never use.
I had the bag of cords, and I actually got rid of it.
Whoa.
Like
what kind of power do you have? Like that is
towards the end of last year, I just went on a purge of stuff. I'm like, I have way too much crap here, you know, and I was just like, I'm gonna sell it, trade it, get rid of it, whatever. I I have a closet back here that was just full of crap, just full of stuff. But might need one of those. And if I need it, I'll buy one. That's if I need it, I'll buy it. There was like VGA cords. I'm never using a VGA cord. For the kids at home, VGA is what you used to connect to your monitor before HDMI.
So I still used VGA monitors up until last year.
Well, that's fine. But I don't like all my monitor. Like, I don't think any. One of my monitors actually still has VGA on it.
Yeah.
So,
but realistically, getting a VGA cord from Amazon is like $15-$20 at the most.
Yeah. You just well, and I mean, I've got a micro center nearby me. So, like, if I really need a computer cable, that's going to be the place I'm going to go.
Yeah, I've got a box sitting right over there that has a bunch of Star Wars Burger King toys because I worked at Burger King when they went through a couple different rounds of Star Wars toys, and I worked there when the first wave came through. So I collected all of them, and especially made sure to get several of the Darth Vader, which was the chase one.
Mm-hmm.
Realistically, I'm never going to do anything with it. I did open it up, and I told my boys, like, on days where they're especially good, that they can go pick a prize out of the box.
Nice.
And so they've opened up, like, they're not opened. So they've opened a bunch of them up to play with them, and
well, at least there you've passed it on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. But I've still got probably a full set, if not two sets of them in that box still.
I still have, like, my stepdad collected records, and same thing. Like, he just had boxes of records that just followed him wherever he moved, and then when he died, I got those. Like, I still have. I don't have well, I have a record player. I don't use it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I used to work for ServPro for about 6 months or so. For those unfamiliar, ServPro, they do disaster cleanup when your house floods or there's a fire, stuff like that. And we went to this one house where they had a fire in their AC, in their heater, and so realistically, they should have had us wipe down all of the different affected areas, but he limited us to only his bedroom because his entire house, we had to rent a pod to move stuff out of the way so that we could get to where we needed to clean, because he had habit trails set up, and that was the only places he could walk in. This is a guy living alone in like a 4 or 5 bedroom house, and he had habit trails set up because it was so full of random stuff.
I think that right there, when you have to have habit trails because you have so much crap, I think that's when you hit the hoarding stage.
I mean, he was
like,
a super hoarder.
Because I have friends who have large collections, and they have like you do, and I can see a little bit on Rilo's got the plants back there. You guys have them out for decorations, which is great. I think that's still, you're still collecting. They're display, and you can see them, and they look cool, and yada yada yada. But when you just have so much stuff that you have to have habit trails because everything takes up an entire room, if it's not like displayed in a neat way, because like people who are into like Warhammer 40K will have, cases upon cases of all the armies they've painted, which is fine.
Or that they haven't painted.
And some they haven't painted. But if it's out on their display, it's a collection.
Yeah.
If it's still on display and people can see it and you can look at it and go, oh, that's cool, and yada da da da. you still have it as a talking point, but when you have to have habit trails and like people have to walk the habit trails to use your restroom or whatever, yeah, you're a hoarder.
Yep. Yeah.
And that's why we joked about why can you get rid of the course? Because I don't want to be a hoarder. I don't want to be a tech hoarder, because I will be.
Yep.
And even then, like I sold a bunch of stuff and I bought more stuff.
Yep. Yeah. At some point, I want to take some of my tech through the years that I've been doing podcasting and make some kind of a shadow box or something for it, something tasteful. Like not all of the tech, but some of the pieces. So like my first microphone that I used, or my first, webcam or something. But yeah.
I mean, I held on to the very first bass I owned for years. I forget. Yeah, at some point, and I think more because I'm into like trading now and like selling this and buying the next thing and upgrading. That's why I don't have so much of a hoard.
Yeah. There's definitely stuff that I need to check out. I don't know who needs to hear this, but that box that you've been saving for 2 years that's empty, but it's a good box. It's okay to throw it away. It really is.
Or put something in it.
Yeah. But on that note, I think we're going to go ahead and call it a night. Thank you for joining us, and especially thanks Scott and Rilo for hopping in.
On social media.
Thanks for having me. We had a great time.
Joe at Joseph_Ard. Check out the website wiseandnerdy.com. And as always, they may not be your father, but they'll always be your daddy.
Or your faux pas.
That's right. Or your faux pas. But yeah. Kurt and Charles ditched me, and Scott and Rilo saved me by joining last minute. I threw up.
Joe, you had my back. You've had my back for so many years at Dragon Con. I've always got your back.
Alrighty. Yeah.